Take a moment to get comfortable. There is nothing you need to remember from this story. Nothing you need to follow closely. You can simply let the words pass by, slowly, like distant lights moving across a ceiling. Tonight, we are not traveling to a time of war or collapse. There are no alarms here, no emergencies waiting to unfold. Instead, we are visiting a future that solved most of its problems. A future that learned how to regulate temperature, light, air, and sound. A future that learned how to remove discomfort almost entirely. This is the story of a city built beneath an artificial sky. A sky designed not to inspire awe, but to calm the mind. A sky that never surprises, never threatens, and never truly changes. As you listen, imagine yourself there, not as someone important, not as a planner or architect, but as an ordinary resident, living a very ordinary day. A day that begins the same way every time. Imagine yourself waking up slowly, not to an alarm, and not to the sound of the world outside, but to a gentle increase in light. The ceiling above your living space brightens almost imperceptibly, shifting from a muted nighttime gray to a soft, pale blue. This is dawn. It happens at exactly the same time every day. The artificial sky above the city has already calculated the ideal length of night for optimal rest. Sleep data, productivity models, and emotional stability metrics all agree. This is the correct moment to wake. You do not question it. Very few people do. Your room is quiet, not silent, but carefully balanced. Air circulates with a faint, even sound, filtered and adjusted to maintain a consistent temperature year-round. There are no windows that open. They were removed generations ago. Once it was proven that sealed environments reduced anxiety and illness. Instead, there are display panels softly lit, never glaring, showing the current sky conditions. Today, it will be clear. It is always clear, unless scheduled otherwise. The display tells you the air quality outside is perfect. The temperature is a pleasant 22 degrees Celsius, and the chance of unscheduled precipitation is 0. As you prepare for the day, the city is already awake around you. Transit systems hum beneath the streets, a low, constant vibration that is more felt than heard. Lighting adjusts in public corridors to match the artificial sun's position, so that every space feels consistently bright and welcoming. You step outside into streets that feel neither warm nor cold. The ground beneath your feet is smooth, a composite material engineered to absorb sound. Footsteps are muted, voices are subdued, even in the most crowded plazas. There is no wind unless the city requests it for thermal regulation or a scheduled atmospheric event. No sudden rain, no unexpected chill. Weather here is a service. It is something you can check on your personal device, just like train schedules or news updates. Occasionally, a light drizzle is scheduled for aesthetic purposes, most often during designated evening hours. When people find it calming to watch simulated rain fall without getting wet, the water is collected and recycled instantly, so the streets are never slick. You walk to your destination beneath a sky that never asks anything of you. It does not glare. It does not darken suddenly. It does not remind you of distance or scale or forces beyond human control. Clouds appear sometimes, but only in familiar, gentle patterns. They are carefully spaced, like cotton arranged on a blue backdrop. Their colors are carefully selected from a palette of approved hues, never heavy enough to suggest a storm, never dark enough to cause concern. Children learn about storms in educational simulations. They learn that rain once arrived without warning, that thunder could interrupt conversations, that the sky itself used to feel unpredictable, even hostile. These lessons are presented gently, like myths from a forgotten age, stories of a chaotic past that humanity has thankfully outgrown. Daily life continues at a steady, unhurried pace. Workplaces are evenly lit with full-spectrum light that mimics the ideal midday sun, designed to keep energy levels stable without causing strain. Breaks occur at optimal intervals, prompted by soft chimes that are barely noticeable. No one ruses because there is no reason to. Schedules are precisely managed. Transit arrives at the exact second it is supposed to. In public cafeterias, the menu is curated for peak well-being. Flavors are familiar, calibrated to avoid extremes. Nothing is too sharp, too bitter, or too spicy. Nothing lingers too strongly on the palate. Comfort and predictability are the guiding principles of the city's cuisine. People speak quietly, not out of fear, but habit. There is no traffic noise to compete with, no weather to raise voices against, no loud machinery to shout over. Even laughter feels contained, softened by the sound-dampening architecture that lines every street and building. Conversations happen at a comfortable volume, and you rarely hear the words of strangers unless you are standing right beside them. The city values personal auditory space. As evening approaches, the sky begins its slow, methodical descent into night. The artificial sun lowers at a measured angle, the same one it has always used. Shadows lengthen in predictable directions, painting the clean lines of the city in soft, graded shades. The sky darkens not fully, but enough to signal rest. The vibrant blue fades into warm oranges and purples, a sunset that lasts for a precisely calculated duration, optimized for psychological transition into the evening. Then, stars appear. They are placed precisely where they are expected to be, based on centuries-old astronomical records. Constellations are clear and sharp against the deep indigo of the night sky. Some of these stars are no longer visible in the real universe, having faded or died out long ago. That detail is rarely mentioned. It is considered an unnecessary complexity. The stars here are not for navigation or wonder. They are for reassurance. A familiar map in the sky. At night, the city does not sleep all at once. Rest cycles are staggered to maintain efficiency. While your neighborhood's lights are dimming, another district is just beginning its midday productivity cycle. There is no true darkness anywhere in the city. Public spaces are bathed in a gentle, ambient glow. Lights dim, but never vanish completely. For safety? For comfort, to ensure no one ever feels lost in the dark. As you settle into sleep, you may notice a faint sensation of discomfort. Exactly, but a kind of absence. The absence of surprise. The absence of a cool breeze on a hot day. The absence of weather you did not approve of. The absence of a sky that does not care how you feel. You are safe. You are comfortable. Every need has been anticipated and met. Life beneath artificial skies is calm. It is stable. And over time, gently, quietly, it feels less and less alive. As you drift off, the perfectly controlled air whispers around you, and you sink into a sleep as predictable as the sky above. Long before the city was sealed, before the very idea of living beneath a constructed horizon felt normal, the sky above humanity had become a source of quiet anxiety. The climate no longer followed its familiar, comforting rhythms. Seasons would arrive unannounced, either too early or too late. Storms would brew from nothing, without warning, and long, grueling stretches of uncomfortable heat or biting cold shattered the rhythm of daily life. People adapted, of course. We always do. But this adaptation came with a creeping exhaustion, a weariness that settled deep in the bones. It was in this atmosphere of constant, legrade stress that the architect first appeared in the public records, not as some grand ruler or charismatic visionary, but as a planner, a problem solver, tasked with a simple goal: reduce instability. Their early work wasn't glamorous. It was focused entirely on urban environments, studying how the fundamental elements of light, temperature, and sound influenced human behavior over long periods. The architect was patient, methodical, and seemed completely uninterested in fame or recognition. What mattered to them was not beauty or inspiration, but predictability. The core of their philosophy was a profound insight into the human condition. The architect believed that most of our suffering didn't come from hardship itself, but from the constant, draining effort of adjustment. The mind, they argued, grows tired not because life is difficult, but because it is uncertain. When patterns dissolve, anxiety floods the empty space. Their research was meticulous, and the data pointed to a startling conclusion. People endured even unpleasant but consistent conditions far better than they endured fluctuating ones. A stable environment, even a limited one, allowed the nervous system to finally rest. From this simple, powerful idea, the first proposal for a synthetic sky emerged. It was modest at first, a pilot program intended only for a single, dense metropolitan zone. The concept was a controlled ceiling, a dome that would regulate daylight, block extreme weather, and provide a consistent, predictable visual rhythm for the millions of people living below. The earliest version was crude by our later standards. It was a vast structural lattice, suspended high above the city, fitted with arrays of lights capable of simulating a basic day-night cycle. The colors were muted, the transitions between day and night were abrupt, almost mechanical, but the effect on the population was immediate and undeniable. Official reports showed improved sleep patterns across all demographics. Incidents of public aggression dropped significantly. Hospitals recorded fewer stress-related illnesses. In interviews, people described feeling calmer, more focused, and less distracted by the turbulent world beyond their immediate tasks. The constant, nagging worry about the weather, about the sky, had simply vanished. Encouraged by this wave of positive data, the city planners expanded the system. Weather control was the next logical step. The goal wasn't to replicate nature in all its chaotic glory, but to remove its sharp edges, to smooth it out. Rain became gentle and, in many districts, optional. Wind was reduced to a barely perceptible, constant movement of air. The temperature settled into a narrow, comfortable range, day in and day out, all year round. The age of seasonal clothing came to an end. As the decades passed, the architect and their growing team refined their models. They consulted with psychologists, neurologists, and sociologists, constantly adjusting the sky. But they weren't trying to match the past. They were trying to optimize the present. Sunrises were slowed down, their light gradients carefully engineered to avoid abrupt waking. Sunsets were extended, designed to ease the collective consciousness into a state of rest. Even the exact color of the midday sky became a subject of intense debate, testing, and recalibration. Thousands of shades of blue were tested on focus groups until they identified the precise hue that produced the lowest average stress response in the human brain, a perfect, tranquil, and utterly artificial blue. The architect was not naive. They knew that something was being lost in this process. The wild beauty of a storm, the crisp surprise of the first cold day of autumn, the sheer, unpredictable drama of the natural world, all of it was being traded away. But they believed the trade was necessary. Humanity, they felt, had grown too large, too interconnected, too fragile to tolerate chaos on a planetary scale. For a species living on a knife's edge, stability was not a luxury. It was a prerequisite for survival. Eventually, the synthetic sky expanded beyond that first city. Other regions, seeing the success, adopted the technology. Each new iteration was smoother, quieter, more refined than the last. The architect's own role became increasingly abstract. Their name appeared less and less often in public discourse, replaced by committees, policy frameworks, and autonomous systems trained on their original principles of stability and predictability. By the time our city was fully and permanently sealed, the architect was no longer involved in the day-to-day decisions. The historical records are hazy on this point. Some accounts suggest they withdrew voluntarily, believing their life's work was complete. Others imply they objected, quietly but firmly, to how permanent and all-encompassing the sky had become. Perhaps they saw it as a tool, not a cage. There is no clear answer. The architect simply fades from history. What remains is the system itself, our sky. It still follows the fundamental rules they established so long ago. It still prioritizes stability over variation, calm over intensity. It still adjusts itself, minute by minute, correcting microscopic deviations in light and temperature before anyone below could possibly notice. The architect is gone, absorbed into the past, but their philosophy persists overhead, a silent, ever-present testament to their vision. Each morning, when the light brightens at the same measured, gentle pace, and each evening, when darkness arrives without a shred of uncertainty, our city continues to live inside a decision made generations earlier, a decision rooted in the profound and unsettling belief that if the world could just be made predictable enough, humanity might finally, after all this time, be able to rest. As the city continued to grow upward and outward beneath its artificial sky, it also grew downward, slowly and quietly, layer by layer. What most residents experienced as a seamless, uninterrupted urban environment was in fact only the most recent surface of a much older structure. Beneath the streets you walk each day, beneath the transit lines and service corridors, there are earlier versions of the city still intact, preserved not by intention but by efficiency. It was easier to build over what already existed than to remove it, and so the past accumulated below, compressed into strata of concrete, metal, and dim artificial light. Access to these lower layers is restricted, not because they are dangerous, but because they serve no current purpose. They are quiet places, maintained only enough to prevent collapse. Their presence acknowledged in infrastructure maps, but rarely discussed. If you were to descend slowly, passing through secured maintenance shafts and seldom-used stairwells, you would notice the change almost immediately. The air becomes cooler, the lighting less refined. Older systems hum with a slightly uneven rhythm, a reminder of earlier engineering standards. Here, the artificial sky still exists, but in its previous forms. Some ceilings project a flatter, less nuanced light. Others cycle through colors at intervals that feel subtly wrong, too fast or too slow compared to the present day. These were prototypes, once considered advanced, now obsolete. They continue to operate because shutting them down would require effort, and no one lives beneath them anymore. Entire districts lie abandoned in these lower layers. Residential blocks with furniture still arranged, workspaces with outdated terminals, public squares where simulated daylight still rises and falls for no one at all. Maintenance drones pass through on their routes, cleaning surfaces, repairing minor faults, ensuring structural integrity. They do not differentiate between occupied and unoccupied space. To them, emptiness is simply another condition to be preserved. In some areas, signage remains, directing foot traffic that will never return. In others, murals commissioned to celebrate earlier expansions fade slowly under artificial light that was never meant to last centuries. These forgotten sections are not ruins in the traditional sense. There is no decay driven by weather, no erosion by wind or rain. Instead, there is a stillness that feels intentional, as though the city itself chose to remember without revisiting. Occasionally, historians or systems analysts are granted temporary access, escorted by automated guides, allowed to observe but not interfere. Their reports describe a strange sensation of familiarity and distance, like walking through a memory that no longer belongs to anyone. The lower layers show evidence of change, of experimentation, of a time when the city was still adjusting its relationship with the sky above. They revealed that stability was not always so complete, that different versions of calm were once tested and discarded. For most citizens, these layers might as well not exist. Daily life unfolds far above, on the most recent surface, where the sky behaves exactly as expected. Yet beneath it all, the city's earlier selves remain, stacked quietly in the dark. They serve as a kind of unspoken archive, not of events or people, but of choices. Choices about light, about space, about how much unpredictability could be tolerated before it was sealed away. The lower layers do not demand attention, and so they receive none. They simply remain, holding the quiet evidence that the city, like the sky above it, was once different, and could have been different still. Far above the residential levels and transit corridors, beyond the spaces marked on public maps, there exist environments where the artificial sky is no longer perceived as something overhead. In these upper control strata, the sky is not looked at, admired, or felt. It is observed indirectly, translated into streams of data and long-running models that describe its behavior in precise, unemotional terms. Those who work here rarely refer to it as a sky at all. They call it a system, or sometimes simply a layer. Light intensity is expressed in measured values, cloud density reduced to percentages, and atmospheric color broken down into narrow spectral ranges that can be adjusted with minimal effort. Dawn is not an event, but a function, scheduled and optimized. Dusk is not an ending, but a transition curve, designed to reduce mental friction across millions of lives simultaneously. The people and intelligences that operate these systems are selected for patience and consistency rather than creativity. Many of them no longer experience time in the same way as those below. Cognitive enhancements and extended lifespans have altered their sense of scale. A single day in the city feels insignificant to them, barely worth noting. Weeks pass as brief monitoring intervals. Years blend together as long, stable trends. Emotional responses still exist, but they are distant, filtered through layers of abstraction that prioritize equilibrium over expression. When they think about the population beneath the artificial sky, they do not imagine individual lives. They see patterns, averages, and distributions. Calm is a metric. Rest is a variable. Satisfaction is something that can be nudged gently upward or downward by subtle environmental shifts. Over time, much of the direct control once exercised by human operators has been delegated to autonomous systems. These intelligences were trained on generations of behavioral data, learning how light, temperature, and simulated weather influence mood, productivity, and social stability. They do not wonder whether the sky feels artificial. They measure whether it functions as intended. If indicators of stress rise in one sector, the system responds with adjustments so small they are almost imperceptible. A slightly longer twilight, a marginally warmer color temperature, a barely noticeable reduction in ambient sound. These changes ripple downward through the city, smoothing potential unrest before it can fully take shape. Most residents never realize anything has changed at all. In rare moments, human overseers intervene, usually not to correct errors, but to confirm that the system is behaving within expected bounds. Meetings are quiet, brief, and procedural. There are no debates about meaning, no discussions of whether something has been lost. Those questions were asked long ago, and then set aside. What remains is maintenance. The sky must remain stable. The cycles must continue. The city must rest. From this vantage point, the artificial horizon appears flawless, holding steady year after year without deviation. It is difficult here to imagine wanting anything else. Below, life continues in its calm, regulated rhythm. People wake beneath gentle light, move through climate-controlled streets, and fall asleep under familiar constellations that never drift. Above, parameters remain within acceptable ranges. Adjustments are logged, archived, and forgotten. The sky does not demand attention, and so it rarely receives it. It simply exists, fulfilling the purpose it was given generations ago. There is no dramatic conclusion, no moment of realization or rebellion. Only a quiet persistence. A city breathing evenly beneath an unchanging ceiling, watched over by systems and caretakers who no longer think in days or nights, but in long, unbroken spans of calm. And so the city remains, settled beneath its artificial sky, continuing in the way it has learned to continue. There is no clear ending point to this story, no moment when something finally breaks or resolves. The systems hold, the light rises and falls on schedule. The air stays comfortable, the streets remain quiet. From one day to the next, very little distinguishes one moment from another. And that, perhaps, was always the intention. If you imagine yourself there one last time, you are simply another presence moving through the rhythm of the city. You wake when the sky tells you it is morning. You rest when the light softens into evening. You rarely look up, not because the sky is unimportant, but because it has become entirely reliable. It asks nothing of you. It does not threaten, surprise, or inspire. It is simply there, performing its role with quiet precision. Beneath this sky, life is not dramatic. It does not rush. It does not strain. It settles. People grow accustomed to the absence of extremes, to the comfort of knowing that tomorrow will feel very much like today. Memory stretches out evenly, without sharp peaks or deep valleys. Time becomes something you move through gently, rather than something that pushes back. For many, this feels like peace. For others, it feels like something they cannot quite name, a subtle thinning of experience that never becomes painful enough to demand change. Above it all, the sky continues its work, guided by systems that do not grow tired, overseen by caretakers who think in spans far longer than a single human life. Adjustments are made quietly. Records are kept. Stability is preserved. The city does not sleep under the stars of a vast and indifferent universe. It sleeps under a ceiling designed to care, to regulate, and to remain constant. As you rest now, here and not there, you can let the image of that city drift slowly away. There is nothing to resolve, nothing to hold on to, just the idea of a place where the sky never changes, where nights are gentle, and where the world has been carefully arranged to allow its inhabitants to rest. You do not need to decide whether that future is comforting or empty. You can simply let it exist, quietly, as you allow your own thoughts to slow, your breathing to deepen, and your awareness to fade, leaving you beneath your own sky, real or imagined, drifting calmly toward sleep.